I never thought the worst day of my career would start with a broken coffee machine and end with a woman in a leopard print coat screaming that she was going to get me fired from the restaurant I owned. It was a slow Tuesday morning when it all began. I arrived at Cedar and Sage, the small upscale bistro I'd poured my life savings into, hoping to finally break free from years of soul-crushing management jobs in other people's kitchens. The place was my dream, reclaimed wood tables, handwritten chalk menus, locally sourced everything. I was proud of what we'd built, not just the look or the food, but the staff culture too. We treated people well, staff and customers alike. That morning was off to a weird start. Josh, my sous chef, called out sick. The dishwasher had flooded again. And the espresso machine, of course, refused to work, which meant I was running on exactly one sad gas station cappuccino and blind optimism. But nothing prepared me for her. Around 11:40 a.m., right as we were gearing up for the light lunch rush, the front door slammed open like it owed someone money. A woman strutted in maybe mid-50s, bottle blonde curls, oversized sunglasses indoors, and a leopard coat that looked like it came with its own backstory. You know the type, loud, entitled, wearing perfume like it was personal armor. I was behind the host's stand because Morgan, our usual host, had a dentist appointment. I greeted her with a standard smile and, I swear, the most neutral voice possible. Hi there, welcome to Cedar and Sage. Do you have a reservation? She looked at me like I'd asked her if she wanted her steak microwaved. Excuse me. She scoffed, tucking her sunglasses down her nose. Do you know who I am? Now, I've been in the restaurant industry long enough to know when someone is about to try and bully their way into a free meal. Still, I kept it professional. I'm sorry, I just didn't see a reservation under your name. We're almost fully booked for the lunch hour, but I'd be happy to check again if you tell me your name. That's when she launched into it. Loudly, loud enough that the two tables already seated turned their heads. I know the owner of this place personally, she said, jabbing a manicured finger into the air. He told me I could come in anytime. No reservations, no waiting. Now are you going to seat me, or do I need to make a phone call? I blinked. There were 100 ways I could have played it. I could have told her right then that I was the owner. I could have escorted her out. I could have laughed in her face, but I was tired and curious. So I played along. I see. Do you remember the owner's name? I asked, keeping my voice light. She didn't even hesitate. Jonathan, she said. I almost choked. There was no Jonathan. Never had been. It was just me, Nina, a 34-year-old woman who spent 6 years saving every tip from catering gigs, bartending, and the occasional food truck festival to make this place happen. There had never been a Jonathan. But this woman, this mystery leopard lady, was so confident, so bold in her lie. I couldn't help but wonder how far she'd take it. So I smiled and said, "One moment, please." I walked to the back, motioned for Kyle, my general manager, and gave him the world's fastest summary. His eyes widened. She tried the "I know the owner" line. I nodded. Kyle grinned. Want me to handle it? I shook my head. Not yet. I want to see what her next move is. And oh, she had moves. When I returned to the front, she was already complaining loudly to one of our servers about the hostess's attitude. She still didn't seem to realize I was the same person she'd spoken to moments ago. I think she assumed I was just another faceless worker bee in a uniform. That's when she spotted an empty four-top by the window. I'll just take that one, she declared, already marching over and dropping her handbag into a chair like if flag staking territory. That table is reserved, I told her. Well then, unreserve it, she snapped. I glanced at the reservation list. The party booked for that table was due in 10 minutes. Regulars, sweet couple in their 60s who came in every Wednesday. No way I was bumping them for this circus. I'm afraid I can't do that, I said evenly. Her voice went up a pitch. Listen, sweetie, if you don't want to lose your job today, I suggest you get me a menu, a bottle of Pinot, and keep the attitude to yourself. I'll be speaking to Jonathan about this and that. That's when I smiled. Perfect. Let's do that, I said. Let me just get him. I turned and walked calmly back into the kitchen. Then I took off my apron, tied my hair back, grabbed my jacket from the office, and returned. She was already on her phone, complaining to someone on speaker. Probably no one. When she saw me, she frowned. Where's the owner? I extended my hand. Hi, I'm Nina Carson. I'm the owner of Cedar and Sage. There's no Jonathan. And you are no longer welcome here. It had only been 2 days since the incident with Veronica Michaels, or VIP Veronica as we now sarcastically called her, in the back kitchen, and I'd been hoping it would just blow over. But apparently she was just getting started. Monday morning, our general manager Darren called a staff meeting before lunch shift. Everyone looked groggy and irritated, still waking up, sipping burnt coffee from plastic lids. Then Darren dropped a bomb. We received an official complaint to corporate. Multiple paragraphs, attached photos, and ... names. My stomach dropped. Who? I asked, even though I knew the answer. He sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. You, Mia, and also Esteban. She's alleging discrimination, neglect, verbal abuse, and gross unprofessionalism. Esteban, our main server and literal angel on earth, nearly choked on his espresso. Are you kidding me? She called me a slur in Spanish when I brought her water. How is she the victim? Darren nodded sympathetically, but he looked trained. I know, but corporate wants a statement. They're sending someone to evaluate. Staff culture, it's protocol. I felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. The rest of the shift passed in a fog. Every customer that walked in made my heart jump. Was it her again? Someone she sent? Was I being watched? But it got worse when Esteban cornered me after lunch with his phone out. You need to see this. He pulled up Veronica's Facebook page. It had been public, a long post, nearly 800 words, with my face front and center, a screenshot taken from our restaurant's own Instagram where I had been tagged during a team feature months ago. This woman works at Riverbend Bistro. She mocked me in front of guests and treated me like trash. Be warned, this restaurant supports abusive, racist staff. Share to protect others. The post had 2,100 shares. My legs buckled. I had to sit. The comments were a mix of strangers blindly agreeing shame on that place, and others tagging friends. Is this the same chick that works with your cousin? Riverbend, isn't that where we went for our anniversary? I was being doxxed, publicly dragged. For what? Because she didn't get a corner booth fast enough. Esteban was furious. We should sue her. This is defamation. But I just felt frozen, embarrassed, exposed. That night, I lay in bed staring at my ceiling fin spinning, thinking of every single moment during that shift. Had I said something wrong? Raised my voice? No, I had handled her calmly, maybe too. Calmly. Still, corporate didn't know that. And they didn't care about calm. They cared about PR, about headlines, about angry posts going viral. The next morning, I found an envelope in my locker. No return name, just a white envelope. Inside, a single typed sentence. You'll regret trying to humiliate me. I always win. There was no signature, but I didn't need one. It was Veronica, and she wasn't just angry anymore. She was out for blood. The note was just the beginning. That same week, strange things started happening at Riverbend Bistro. It was like Veronica had turned into a shadow, stalking every corner of the restaurant. First, the minor stuff, a mysterious Yelp review that mentioned rude staff and dirty tables, even though our cleaning logs showed the opposite. Then a strange call to the front desk, silence on the other end. Then, worst of all, our reservation system began showing fake bookings, blocking genuine customers from getting tables. At first, I thought it was just bad luck or coincidence. But then my phone buzzed during a quiet afternoon shift. a text message. From an unknown number, you think you're the owner, but you're nothing. Watch your back. Mia, I froze. I stared at the screen, the restaurant noises fading into a distant hum. Was this really happening? I told Darren immediately. He said, "We should involve the police." But I hesitated. What if this made things worse? What if Veronica was just toying with me and calling the cops would escalate her anger? That night, I stayed late, double-checking the security footage. The cameras caught a shadowy figure lurking near the back entrance, a woman with a familiar posture, but the hood and scarf obscured her face. The only clue was a distinct red bracelet on her wrist, the same one Veronica always wore in the photos I had seen. The next day, I arrived to find graffiti scrawled on the back wall of the restaurant. "You will pay." The police finally got involved after I reported the vandalism, but it felt like the damage was already done. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't focus at work. And Veronica. She was still posting on social media, escalating her public shaming campaign, tagging the restaurant and using hashtags that could ruin us financially. I realized then that this wasn't just about a table anymore. This was a personal war, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for it. After the graffiti incident, things took a darker turn. I was running on fumes, juggling the daily chaos at the restaurant and the growing storm outside it. Every time I looked at my phone, there was another notification, a new comment, a fresh post, a tagged photo. Veronica was relentless, but I wasn't completely alone. One afternoon, as I was wiping down tables, a familiar face approached. Claire, a longtime customer who often brought her family for Sunday brunch. Claire was an influential local blogger. With thousands of followers and a reputation for honest reviews, I saw what's happening, she said quietly. And it's not right. I want to help. Claire's support was a breath of fresh air. Together, we started planning a strategy to combat Veronica's harassment. She suggested reaching out to loyal customers and food bloggers for positive coverage to counterbalance the negative storm. We also set up a small private security team to review footage and keep an eye on any suspicious activity around the restaurant. Darren coordinated with local police, ensuring that every incident, from fake bookings to graffiti, was documented. Meanwhile, I began drafting a public statement. I wanted to address the situation openly without feeding the fire. Honesty was the best policy, I thought. I penned a heartfelt post explaining who we were, our commitment to guests, and how false accusations could damage more than just a business. The response surprised me. Messages poured in from regulars and visitors alike, expressing support and disbelief over the smear campaign. Local food critics posted glowing reviews. The narrative was shifting. Still, Veronica wasn't backing down. Her social media rants became more personal, attacking me directly, questioning my integrity, and even dragging my family into her posts. It hurt. It really did. But now, armed with allies and a plan, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this battle wasn't lost after all. A week later, after one of the busiest nights of the season, I found myself locking up the restaurant alone. The quiet hum of the city night wrapped around me like a heavy cloak. I was exhausted, mentally and physically drained from the nonstop battle. As I stepped out back to check the dumpsters, I spotted a figure leaning against the wall near the alley entrance. My heart skipped a beat. It was Veronica. She looked different up close, less fierce, more worn. Her eyes didn't have the usual fiery arrogance, but something colder, almost hollow. "Hey," she said, her voice low but steady. I hesitated. This could be a trap, but part of me craved answers. Why had she turned into this person? What did she really want? "I'm not here to fight," she continued. "At least, not anymore. But you need to understand, this isn't just about a table. It's about what you represent." I swallowed hard. What do I represent? She looked away, her jaw tight. Privilege, indifference, the feeling that people like me don't belong in places like yours. "You're the face of a system that has always shut me out." Her words hit harder than I expected. I thought this was just about entitlement and arrogance, but there was something deeper. Pain, resentment, decades of unseen struggles boiled into one night. I get it, I said slowly. But there are ways to be heard without destroying people. Veronica's laugh was bitter. You think you're the good guy. You're part of the problem. Before I could respond, she pulled out her phone and showed me a message thread. It was from someone who had worked here years ago. Someone she said was treated unfairly and ignored. We both want justice, she whispered. But I guess we fight in different ways. The moment hung heavy between us. I didn't know what to say. And just like that, she turned and walked away into the darkness, leaving me alone with more questions than answers. The encounter with Veronica left me unsettled in ways I hadn't anticipated. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every word she'd said. It was easy to dismiss her as just another entitled troublemaker, but now I saw something more complex, a story of pain, exclusion, and anger boiling over. For years, I had thought I was just trying to keep the family legacy alive, to modernize and improve what my grandparents started. I had focused on marketing, on growing the business, on building a reputation. But I realized I had overlooked something crucial: the community around us and the invisible struggles many faced. The restaurant wasn't just my business. It was a part of this neighborhood. And Veronica's outburst wasn't just about a table or free drinks. It was about feeling invisible, unheard, and powerless. I knew I needed to change how I approached things. The next day, I called a meeting with Darren, Claire, and a few trusted staff. I shared what had happened, my doubts, and my desire to find a better way forward. We decided to start a new initiative, an outreach program aimed at supporting local underserved communities, offering job training and opportunities at the restaurant, and hosting community events that welcomed everyone. It felt like a risk. Would this alienate some of our current clientele? Would Veronica even care? But for the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful. Maybe through understanding and action, this battle could become more than just a feud. It could be a turning point for all of us. Launching the community outreach program was both exciting and nerve-wracking. We started by inviting a few local nonprofits and youth groups to tour the restaurant and discuss how we could collaborate. Darren and Claire helped spread the word, and soon we had applications from people eager to learn and work. One of the first trainees was a young woman named Jasmine. She reminded me a lot of Veronica, fiery, sharp, but clearly hungry for a chance to prove herself. Jasmine was skeptical at first, unsure if this opportunity was real or just another disappointment. Slowly, she started to open up, and her energy became contagious. She picked up new skills quickly and even suggested creative ideas for menu specials that reflected the neighborhood's culture. But as things improved behind the scenes, new tensions emerged outside. Veronica's online attacks shifted from personal insults to organized efforts to sabotage our events. Fake complaints flooded the restaurant's review pages, and a few of our longtime customers started canceling reservations, influenced by the negative buzz. One evening, during a busy dinner service, a group of customers loudly accused us of exploiting the community for profit and demanded we stop the outreach program immediately. It was painful to hear, especially because I knew we were trying to do something good. Darren pulled me aside and said, "This is going to get harder before it gets better, but you're doing the right thing." I nodded, determined not to let the negativity derail what we had started. Meanwhile, Jasmine was growing into a confident team member, and I could see the beginnings of a new chapter for both her and the restaurant. Despite the chaos, I felt something I hadn't in months: real hope. The tension outside the restaurant continued to simmer, but inside, something remarkable was unfolding. Jasmine blossomed from a hesitant trainee into a spirited ambassador for the outreach program. Her enthusiasm was infectious, inspiring other staff to embrace the changes more openly. One evening, after a particularly hectic shift, Claire invited me to a local community meeting. Reluctantly, I agreed. I wasn't used to stepping outside the restaurant walls socially, especially into spaces that felt unfamiliar. At the meeting, I was surprised to see Veronica there too. She wasn't alone. A group of local activists and neighbors surrounded her. People I had never met before but whose voices carried strength and history. The room buzzed with energy and raw honesty as stories poured out about the neighborhoods. Struggles, lack of opportunities, gentrification fears, and feeling unheard by businesses like mine. Veronica caught my eye across the room. For the first time, there was no hostility, just cautious curiosity. When it was my turn to speak, I shared our plans for the restaurant's outreach and expressed a sincere desire to build bridges, not walls. The conversation was challenging, but enlightening. We found common ground in our hopes for a community where everyone felt valued and included. Afterward, Veronica approached me quietly. "Maybe we can work together," she said softly. It was the first olive branch. That night, I reflected on how much this journey had changed me. The fight wasn't just external. It was about breaking down my own preconceptions and learning to listen. For the first time in a long time, I felt ready to rebuild not just my business, but the relationships that truly mattered. The days following, the community meeting left me deep in thought. That night, I realized the real work wasn't just about fixing the restaurant's image or silencing the online trolls. It was about becoming a true part of the neighborhood. It meant listening without judgment, building trust, and showing that I cared beyond the bottom line. Jasmine became my unofficial right hand. Watching her grow, I saw reflected the potential in so many young people in the area, bright minds, waiting for a chance, just like I had once hoped for myself. Together, we started planning workshops and training sessions at the restaurant, inviting local artists, musicians, and small business owners to share their skills. Meanwhile, Darren and Claire helped me reach out to other businesses in the area. Slowly but surely, a network began to form, a community united not just by geography, but by shared hope for renewal. One evening, during a brainstorming session, Claire surprised me with an idea: a monthly community night at the restaurant. Each month, a different local group or cause would be featured. Fundraising events, open mix, art shows. It was ambitious, but it felt right. Still, not everything was smooth. Veronica's online attacks persisted, and the restaurant's review ratings wavered. Some longtime customers remained skeptical, hesitant to embrace change. The pressure was constant. On a personal level, I began questioning how far I was willing to go. Running the restaurant had been my family's legacy, but now it felt like my mission was larger than just business success. I wanted to build something lasting, something that could heal old wounds and open new doors. That realization gave me renewed energy. The journey ahead was uncertain, but I wasn't alone anymore. Together with Jasmine, Claire, Darren, and a growing circle of supporters, I was ready to face whatever came next. Just as the momentum seemed to build, trouble came crashing in. It started with a series of negative online reviews, some genuine, many clearly planted by competitors or detractors. The restaurant's ratings dipped sharply overnight, sending a ripple of doubt through staff and regular customers alike. I found myself constantly refreshing social media feeds, trying to respond diplomatically but feeling the sting of personal attacks disguised as criticism. Veronica's presence loomed larger than ever. Despite the tentative peace we'd been trying to build, she organized a few public protests outside the restaurant. Small at first, but disruptive, signs, chants, and a handful of disgruntled locals chanting accusations of gentrification and disrespect. It felt like the very community I was trying to uplift was now turning against me. Inside, the pressure mounted. Jasmine confided in me one afternoon that some of the staff were growing weary, questioning if the vision was worth the constant backlash. Darren had to step in multiple times to mediate heated arguments between team members frustrated with the negativity. I was exhausted. The sleepless nights, the constant calls, and the endless battles wore on me. My confidence wavered, and I wondered if I was biting off more than I could chew. But then, during one particularly hard day, Claire reminded me why I started this journey. "You're not just running a restaurant," she said firmly. "You're building a community, Her words rekindled a fire inside me. I realized that no meaningful change ever came without resistance. This was a test, not just of my business, but of my resilience and commitment. I reached out to some local leaders and allies I'd made, asking for their support to host an open forum. We would listen, address concerns honestly, and find ways to move forward together. The challenges were far from over, but I refused to back down. If anything, these trials steeled my resolve. I was determined to prove that our restaurant could be a place for everyone. The night of the big event arrived with a mix of excitement and nerves swirling in my chest. Months of planning, outreach, and sometimes heated conversations had led to this moment, our first official community festival at the restaurant. It was our chance to show everyone what this place truly stood for. As guests began to arrive, the atmosphere transformed. Local musicians filled the air with vibrant melodies, artists displayed their works in corners of the dining room, and food vendors from nearby neighborhoods set up booths outside. The whole block buzzed with energy. Claire and Jasmine were everywhere, at once greeting guests, coordinating volunteers, and ensuring the evening ran smoothly. Darren handled logistics, his calm presence grounding the hectic night. Veronica showed up too, accompanied by a few of her supporters. I braced myself, ready for confrontation, but instead she surprised me by quietly observing from a distance. I caught her eye briefly, and though she didn't approach, there was a flicker of something, maybe curiosity, maybe respect. The highlight was when I took the microphone to welcome everyone. I spoke from the heart about family legacy, challenges faced, and the vision for unity. I emphasized that this restaurant wasn't just about food. It was about people, stories, and healing divisions. Throughout the evening, I witnessed genuine connections forming, old skeptics engaged in conversation with newcomers. Kids danced beside elderly neighbors. Strangers became friends. By the end of the night, many came up to thank me. Some apologized for their earlier doubts. Others pledged their support for future events. That evening marked a profound shift. The restaurant was no longer just a business. It was a beacon of community spirit and hope. The hard work, the setbacks, and the fights had led to something greater than I ever imagined. Walking home after closing, tired but fulfilled, I knew the journey wasn't over. But now, with this foundation of trust and togetherness, I was ready to face whatever the future held. The weeks after the community festival were filled with a renewed sense of purpose and optimism. The restaurant's reputation began to shift in the hearts and minds of the neighborhood. Online reviews reflected genuine appreciation, and the buzz brought in new faces eager to experience what we were building together. Veronica's protests ceased, replaced by quiet curiosity from her and some of her followers. A few even showed up during community nights, tentatively joining in the celebrations. It wasn't full acceptance, but it was progress. I continued to invest in the people around me, staff, neighbors, and friends who believed in this vision. Jasmine graduated and took on a leadership role, mentoring the next generation of young community members who found their footing through the programs we'd created. Claire and Darren remained steadfast allies, helping me dream bigger and act bolder. Together, we planned expansions, not just of the restaurant, but of the community initiatives that had become our heart. One evening, as I closed the doors, I paused and looked around the room, walls filled with art, tables occupied by smiling faces, and a sense of warmth that had been missing for so long. This place had truly transformed. I realized then that the legacy I was honoring wasn't just the one my grandparents started decades ago, but the new one we were crafting every day, a legacy of resilience, inclusion, and hope. No matter what challenges lay ahead, I knew I was ready. Because this was more than a restaurant, it was home.
Subscribe to the channel and like this video.